My name is Trung, 38 years old, Chief Investigator of the Major Crime Squad of N City. My most special partner for the past 5 years has been a Beagle named Rex. He is not an ordinary police dog. I rescued Rex from a strange accident in the Forbidden Forest. Since that day, he has had a strange ability. He can smell invisible things, traces not left on the ground, and sometimes, things that do not belong to this world. That morning, my phone rang before dawn. Captain Hung's voice dropped. Another corpse, Old Quarter, eyes open, mouth agape as if scared to death. Old Quarter, once a bustling residential area, now deserted and cold. I know that area well. There are many unsolved cases here, and I also know that this kind of death, leaving no traces, no evidence, can only be a case beyond the normal boundaries. Rex and I got in the car. It was still dark, the fog was thick, the pale yellow streetlights couldn't penetrate the thick layer of milky steam. When I arrived at the scene, I saw the body of a man in his 40s lying in the middle of a reed bed that was above his knees. His eyes were wide open, his mouth was stiff, his limbs were curled up like someone who had been electrocuted, or had his soul strangled by something. No wounds, no papers, no phone. I turned to Rex. "Find it." Rex lowered his head, sniffed around the body, then suddenly stood up straight, his ears perked up. He looked into a gap in the reed bed and growled. I squinted in that direction, but saw nothing but thick fog and howling wind. Suddenly Rex let out a roar, jumped back. His back arched, his fur stood on end, his whole body trembled. I stepped closer, intending to calm it down, when suddenly a cold wind from that gap blew straight into my face. I was startled. It was not a normal wind. It carried the metallic smell, the damp smell of something that had been lying on the ground for too long. And another smell, the smell of death. Asked the forensic technician to immediately seal off the scene. While they planted the markers, I quietly observed the ground around the body. That's when I saw it. A trail of blood about 2 meters long, spreading in a zigzag pattern, from behind the body to the edge of the reed bed. But the strange thing was, the body had absolutely no wound to create that blood trail. I bent down, touched it with my gloved hand. The blood was still warm. "It's not the victim's," I said softly. Rex stepped forward, sniffing the blood. He turned his head to look at me, then started to part the reed bed in the direction of the blood. I signaled a young policeman to follow me, flashlight in hand. We walked slowly through the thick reeds, the air growing colder. Rex led the way, his nose almost touching the ground. Then he stopped. An old stone wall appeared in the middle of the reeds like a forgotten relic. On the moss-covered wall, a bloody handprint had been smeared, sliding down. A shiver ran down my spine. The blood had the shape of someone being dragged away, or desperately trying to cling to the wall. But there were no footprints, nothing but blood and silence. Suddenly Rex barked loudly, then screeched, backing away behind the wall. I ran around, shining my flashlight, and there it was. A small wooden box, half buried in the ground. On top of the box was a strange hand-carved symbol. 2 interlocking circles with an eye in the middle. Before I could open the box, Rex suddenly let out a long howl, unlike his usual bark. It sounded like it was screaming a sound from another world, making my whole body crawl. A strong wind suddenly blew by, even though there was no wind at all. I turned around and saw that the flashlight of the young policeman had gone out. He disappeared. Anne. I called out the name of the young policeman who had just come with me, my voice echoing through the misty reed field. There was no response. There was only the sound of the wind and the heavy breathing of Rex, who was standing in front of the box, not letting me get close. I had never seen him react so strongly. I pulled out my flashlight and shone it around. There were no footprints, no strange objects, and disappeared as if he had never existed. My intuition told me that everything started from the box. I walked back, bent down to observe more closely. The symbol on the wooden lid, two interlocking circles and an eye in the middle, reminded me of an ancient document I had read in an ancient religious archive. The symbol of a banned 19th century sect that summoned and sealed rebellious spirits. I put on gloves and carefully opened the lid. Inside was a small cloth bag, embroidered with red thread with symbols that looked like ancient Cham language. I took a picture with my phone, intending to call for legal assistance when the phone screen suddenly went black. Rex growled. The air grew colder, a lot colder. Then I heard whispering. A low moan came from inside the bag, like the voice of a person, trapped in a very small space. The voice was unclear, wordless, but full of anger. Rex howled. The wind blew fiercely around the reed field. The tall grass bent down as if something invisible just passed by. I clenched the cloth bag in my hand, my heart pounding like a drum. I knew this case was no longer a normal murder. I was facing an ancient force, and Rex, somehow, sensed it. Before I did, I hugged the cloth bag tightly, turned to look at Rex. He still did not take his eyes off the space behind the wall where the cold wind had just blown. Rex growled. As for me, my heart was pounding in my chest. The space seemed to thicken. Each footstep sounded like metal scraping against stone. I stuffed the cloth bag into my pocket, then turned on the flashlight again, and went deeper into the space behind the wall. And I saw Ann. He was standing, but not moving. His eyes were wide open, staring into space as if hypnotized. Ann! No response. I moved closer. Rex roared louder, circling Ann as if trying to stop me from getting closer. When I touched his shoulder, Ann turned his head to look at me. His eyes were empty like a doll's. Then he uttered a sentence that was not in his own voice. You shouldn't open it. That voice was cold, slow and resounding, as if echoing from the bottom of an ancient well. My limbs went limp. Rex rushed forward, barking repeatedly, and jumped onto Ann's shoulder. He fell down, eyes closed. I knelt down and shook him awake. Ann, wake up! After a while he opened his eyes. He was panting. His eyes had returned to normal, but he was extremely confused. Why are you here? I remember standing next to you. Then someone called me by my real name. I shivered. Ann's real name. Only his family knew. No one at the scene could have called it out. Unless the thing inside the duffel bag knew more than we thought. I helped Ann. Up. Let's get out of here now. Rex led the way. I held the duffel bag tightly, feeling it pulsing, like it had blood in it. I knew I needed to get to a place, a person, who knew more about ancient symbols. And maybe the world of the unliberated. I drove straight to a house isolated in the pine forest, about an hour's drive from the city. It was not named on any maps. The owner was a man named Vian, a scholar of ancient symbology who had worked with the police on a paranormal case many years ago. When Rex and I arrived, He was already waiting on the porch, as if he knew we were coming. "You opened it, didn't you?" he asked before I could say anything. I nodded, feeling a chill down my spine. He held out his hand. "Give me the bag, but don't open it again, no matter what you hear." I handed the bag to him. He carefully placed it on the stone table and pulled out a wooden box covered with a talisman made of dough paper and red ink from a drawer. After putting the cloth bag inside the box, he sealed it with an ancient bronze seal. This is no ordinary object. It is a soul seal, a soul that has been sealed incorrectly. It cannot be released, and it will try every way to possess the living or pull people back to its world. Anne sat still in the corner of the house, his face still pale. Rex lay close to my feet, his eyes fixed on the box. I asked, "Is there any way to seal it again? Or destroy it?" Mr. Vienne shook his head slowly. "There's only one way. Take it back to where it was awakened, and perform the ritual of closing the gate. Otherwise it won't stop. It will find the next person. The person who came into contact with it." I squeezed his hand. "Where is that place?" He looked straight into my eyes. "The lost temple in the Forbidden Forest, where Rex died." My heart clenched. A memory rushed back. The image of me carrying Rex covered in blood through the dark bushes 5 years ago. I thought he was dead, but then he woke up, and from that day on he began to see things no one else could. Rex growled softly as if to confirm it. I looked at the sealed box, feeling an invisible pressure on my chest. The real journey had only just begun. We left Mr. Vienne's house at dawn, pale yellow light filtering through the sparse pine forest. In the car, no one spoke. Anne remained silent. Rex sat in the back, eyes fixed on the sealed box. I drove as Mr. Vienne had instructed, deep into the land that had been abandoned for more than 2 decades, where there was an ancient temple buried in a flood in 1999. The locals called it the Forbidden Forest. No one dared to come here after sunset. When the car could not go any further, we continued through the forest on foot. The deeper we went, the thicker the air became. The smell of rotting grass and damp soil made me suffocate. Rex suddenly stopped. He lowered himself, growling and looking ahead. In front of us was a cliff covered with vines, moss, and blurred ancient symbols. But under the flashlight, I saw a small path between 2 crevices of the rock, just enough for a person to crouch. "Through here," I said. "It must be here." One by one we stepped into the crevice. The cold smell came like a breath from underground. As we went deeper, the light faded. The flashlight began to flicker. Inside, a space opened up unexpectedly. Ancient stone floors, broken pillars, and in the middle, a broken stone altar. I recognized this place. Even though it had been buried by time, I still remembered where I had found Rex, wounded, lying unconscious in blood. 5 years ago, I placed the box on the altar. The air around me seemed to freeze. Rex let out a long howl, his eyes fixed on the darkness between the collapsed stone pillars. Then I heard footsteps, not ours. A shadowy figure passed between 2 stone pillars. A murmur of whispers rang out, like the voices of dozens of people at once, and tremblingly took my hand. "Brother, it's coming." I nodded. "Prepare the ritual." I opened the notebook that Mr. Vienne had given me before he left. In it were the steps of an ancient ritual, how to draw a barrier, how to recite the incantation in ancient Cham, and most importantly, the presence of a guardian spirit to counter the spirit that was being sealed. Rex, that spirit. I spread the barrier powder around the altar, using charcoal to carve ancient symbols into the stone. Sweat poured down my back despite the freezing cold. Anne held the flashlight and shone it all around, his hands shaking, but he did not move from his position. The whispers had now turned into screams. The sounds rang out without human intonation, like hundreds of souls screaming in despair. I opened the box. The cloth bag trembled as if something was struggling inside. I placed it in the middle of the barrier and began to recite the incantations in the correct order. The air moved violently. The wind whistled between the stone pillars. The trees on the edge of the forest shook violently even though there was no natural wind. Rex barked loudly, his eyes glowing red with fire. He rushed into the middle of the barrier, stood in front of the cloth bag and let out a long howl, as if summoning an ancient force from his own blood. The shadow appeared. A tall, faceless entity, just a dense mass of black gas, in human form, stood at the edge of the barrier. He roared, causing the rocks beneath his feet to shake. I chanted the final incantation. Light burst from the barrier, blowing away the black mist. The rebellious spirit roared in anger, then dissipated into ashes. In the air, the cloth bag smoldered and then went out. Inside, nothing. Rex fell. I rushed to hug him. My heart stopped. But then, he opened his eyes, breathed softly, and licked my hand, and burst out laughing. I laughed too, a relieved laugh after a long nightmare. We closed the gate, and Rex remains the silent hero, keeping the boundary between the two worlds.